Some names are not so much given to newborns as inflicted upon them. We're all aware of the famous examples of Moon Unit Zappa, Zowie Bowie, and the various Burkes who have foisted upon firstborn sons the name of every player in their favourite football team. The American film critic Elizabeth Rapp, herself the victim of continual surname-centric jokes, told me she was at university with a man named Skywalker Payne. I don't know whether his distinctly un-Christian name came from parents on a rare return to Earth from the forest moon of Endor, or a drunken application to deed poll, but either way it's inexcusable. Last names are no less a source of embarrassment for those struggling under the yoke of an awful one than are horrendous given names, though blame for them is harder to apportion. My best friend's name is Gemma Dick. Once, on a residential school trip to Berlin, she stood up as the coach crossed the border into Germany and announced, "Yes! For the next 5 days my name no longer means Gemma Penis." "No," said a voice beside her. "Now it means Gemma Fat." Names odd and entertaining have long been the subject of comedy, and occasionally even of study. My father's research into the subject must be some of the longest, if least scientific, ever conducted. In 30 years as a teacher, he has tirelessly noted the correlation between personality and name. The result of these decades of observation can be, and often is, expressed in a 4-word conclusion that has become his catchphrase. Daft name, daft kid. David and Dipesh, Michael and Mohammed, Oliver and Omar. These are the dependable names of dependable pupils. Hercules, Hurricane, Tarker and Mustard. These are not the names of well-behaved boys. Girls may be similarly categorized. Sarahs, Charlottes, Susans and Sophies are all liable as not to be potential prefects. Those afflicted with names like Dewdrop, Starburst, Bo Peep, or any kooky misspelling of Mandy or Sandy or Mindy or Cindy, or anything the good Lord intended to end in a Y, are less likely to turn in their homework on time. Research more disciplined than Dad's, but that largely supports his findings, was conducted by a pair of Stevens, the pioneering economist Stephen D. Levitt, and his co-author on the endlessly opening for economics, Stephen J. Dubner. In a chapter called Would a Roshanda by Any Other Name Smell as Sweet, they detail the case of Temptress, a 15-year-old girl who ended up in court for, to put it politely, living up to her name. They also discuss the now famous case of Robert Lane, who named one son Winner and another Loser. Loser, who sensibly shortened his name to Lou, became a successful and respected police officer. Winner, meanwhile, became a hopelessly habitual criminal. I asked Dad if he thought this story invalidated any of his onomastic ideas. "Of course not," he said. "It's not a proper comparison. They've both got daft names. And I bet they were both buggers at school." The function of the nonsense name is to make the rest of us okay with our normal names. My name has never caused me much consternation, though there were often occasions during my middle school career when I wished it didn't rhyme quite so obviously with snot. But I'm told by American friends that my name doesn't suit my accent, and by English friends that it doesn't suit my personality. "You shouldn't be a Scot," an ex-girlfriend and current friend once said. "You should be a Giles." I don't know a Giles, so I'm not sure how apt an emblem of my background it would be, though I did go to school with boys named Felix and Tristan and Rupert, and one named Edward John Warwick Lowe. This last was, I confess, a name I envied. It had so many initials, and all of them so noble. It did not inspire the same affection in its owner, who liked to be known only as Eddie, and, when our teenage years arrived, retreated further into Ed. I knew a boy with an even better and more aristocratic moniker, though to preserve his anonymity, which is to say that he is bigger than I, and, I think, knows where I live, I won't mention it here. It's information enough to note that he has more middle names than Prince Charles, and that once, persuaded to list them all, he was asked why he had so many. Before he was able to answer, he became the victim of one of those lethal witticisms that only ever seem to have flown over school desks or across the Algonquin's round table. "Those," said a quick-witted enemy, "are the names of all the men who might be his father." The reasons for these musings on amusing names is to front-load some explanation to my answer to a question I am often asked. by people who know me well and have perhaps misplaced faith in my judgment on the subject, by people who don't know me very well and perhaps want to, and by people who don't know me at all and perhaps think the inquiry a suitable icebreaker. The question is, what one book would you recommend for my book club? My answer is generally taken to be a joke, and, I fear, as a way of avoiding or displaying contempt for the question. It is none of these. It is the book that I genuinely believe would bring most joy to a communal reading environment, a book that everyone in any book club would finish, one upon which even the shyest and least literate member would want to articulate an opinion, and one which, this I believe being the prime function of book clubs, would move conversation onto subjects other than itself most quickly and agreeably. It is a work of mild infamy, entitled Potty, Fartwell, and Knob. Its subtitle explains its subject, Extraordinary but True Names of British People. The book is written by Russell Ashe, though written may not be the word. The insult Stanley Kaufman jabbed into Truman Capote over the latter's masterwork In Cold Blood, "This isn't writing, it's research," is apt here. What methods Ashe used to compile his comic collection from the seemingly unsearchable mass of identities detailed in centuries of census documents I don't know, though whatever they were, they are admirable. But to say he wrote the book seems a stretch. Instead, we should say he compiled it, though that does not connote the creativity required in the operation, or the comedian's inspiration that powered it. Regardless of all this, the book Ashe created is one of the funniest and most sustained examples of exquisite silliness in English. Open it anywhere, and by anywhere I mean both in the book and in the world, and it will amaze and amuse. There is no situation so grave it can suppress the childish giggles that flow from the sudden knowledge that a woman in 19th century England lived an entire life under the name Emily Etta Cock, or that, in the same century, Dewsbury in Yorkshire was home to a man called Pontius Pilate Hughes. As the example of the aforementioned Emily makes obvious, most of the best names in the book are the rudest. Willie Titcock, Arcibella Bending, James Bottom Bottom Bottom, Arthur Brown Crapper, and Teresa Fartwangler all make it impossible to read the book and remain in a bad mood. Admittedly, some of the names are funny only in retrospect. I'm sure, for example, that iPod, ID Card, William Broadband, and Bridget Dogging passed their lives, which ended hundreds of years ago, relatively unsnickered at, and so perhaps did Page Turner and Ernest Womble Womble. It seems miraculous, though, that Rhoda Cock, Norman Conquest, Tom Cat, and Nicholas, If Jesus had not died for thee, thou hadst been damned barebon, could have survived the schoolyard in any century. The book isn't simply a source of entertainment, but also of inspiration. Aspiring erotic actors in need of a nom de porn are advised to peruse a copy. Jane Fucks Longer, Ivor Hardon, Jenny Taylor, Everard Cock, and Emily Rector are all ideal for their intentions, though William No-Cock and Dick Luss are perhaps best avoided by those hoping to break into the business of blue movies. The best chapter, aside from that called simply The C Word, is the one Ashe, quite literally I suppose naming names, entitles Reverse Names. In it are names that are not immediately amusing, but that, like Kate Forney, only take on their comic character when read as they would be from a school register. Forney, Kate. I would recommend Potty, Fartwell, and Knob to connoisseurs of comedy as earnestly and unreservedly as I would recommend Woodhouse or Pelham, or the fictionalized memoirs of Spike Milligan and Clive James. I recommend that you recommend it the moment you are next asked to think of a title fit for the focus of your book club. Anyone who dislikes your suggestion either has his sense of humour encased in a fortress of impenetrable prudery, or once had to change his name from Peculiar Canon.